You know what's worse than losing your money? Losing your own son to greed. My name is Margaret, and for 14 months I watched my body wither while my son and his wife lived off my savings. They said it was just business. They called it an opportunity. I called it betrayal. What happened next changed my life forever, and if you've ever trusted the wrong people, stay with me till the end. This story might be your warning. You know what's worse than losing your money? Losing your own son to greed. My name is Margaret, and for 14 long months I watched my body wither while my son and his wife lived off my savings. They called it helping with finances. I called it betrayal. What happened next changed my life forever, and if you've ever trusted the wrong people, stay with me till the end. This story might be your warning. When I was young, I believed love was unbreakable. I thought family was a fortress built from shared memories, late-night laughter, and the unspoken promise that we would never harm one another. But years have a cruel way of teaching us that sometimes the sharpest knives are hidden in familiar hands. My son Marcus was my everything. I raised him in a home filled with warmth and privilege, an elegant two-story house with marble floors and soft light spilling through the French windows. My late husband, Richard, had built it for me when life was kinder. After his sudden heart attack, the walls of that mansion echoed with a loneliness I couldn't fill. So, when Marcus suggested that he and his wife, Tiffany, move in to help me cope, I welcomed the idea with trembling gratitude. They arrived with boxes, smiles, and promises. Tiffany, tall and stylish, kissed my cheek and said, "Don't you worry about a thing, Mom. We'll take care of you." Those words at the time sounded like love. I didn't realize they were the first line of a slow, deliberate performance. The first few weeks felt almost beautiful. Tiffany cooked breakfast. Sourdough toast, coffee, and berries arranged as if for a magazine photo. Marcus worked from my late husband's study, saying he wanted to keep Dad's spirit alive. I believed him. I wanted to. Then came the day Tiffany offered to handle my bills. "You shouldn't stress about numbers," she said sweetly. "You need rest, not receipts." Marcus agreed, adding, "You've been through enough, Mom. Let us shoulder this for a while." I hesitated only a second before handing her my bank folder. That single gesture, trust disguised as relief, was the first brick in my downfall. By the second month, Tiffany suggested simplifying my accounts. She said she'd merged them for efficiency. Marcus reassured me, "It's all in the family." I didn't question it. My energy was thin, my appetite fading, and I still woke every night reaching for Richard's side of the bed. Soon, little things began to vanish. A silver tea set Richard had given me on our anniversary disappeared from the dining room. Tiffany said she'd sent it for polishing. It never came back. Then an antique Persian rug, my favorite, was gone. "Too dusty," she said. It triggered my allergies. One afternoon, I walked into the parlor to find movers carrying out my vintage sofa. Tiffany smiled as they passed. "Sold it," she said, her tone light as air. "Didn't match our aesthetic." Our aesthetic. The words stung. My home was slowly turning into something I didn't recognize: white leather, chrome edges, soulless minimalism. The warmth Richard and I built was stripped away piece by piece until even the air felt colder. I noticed, too, that food began to disappear from the pantry faster than I could restock it. When I asked about groceries, Tiffany waved her manicured hand. "We're budgeting, Margaret. Organic prices are crazy right now." Budgeting. Yet I would see her coming home with boutique shopping bags, nails freshly done, the scent of expensive perfume trailing behind her. One night, I opened my purse to find my credit card missing. Tiffany laughed when I mentioned it. "Oh, silly me. I must have taken it when I went to get gas. I'll return it tomorrow." Tomorrow never came. Within months, I stopped seeing any of my bank statements. Tiffany had switched everything to paperless. When I asked, Marcus put his arm around me. "Mom, please trust us. Tiffany's handling everything perfectly. You should just focus on healing." Healing. The irony was cruel. I was wasting away, skipping meals, sleeping in layers to hide the trembling in my bones. I told myself it was grief. But grief doesn't drain your savings account. The breaking point came one night when hunger woke me. My stomach twisted in pain, so I went downstairs quietly, hoping to find leftovers. Instead, I found them, Marcus and Tiffany, dining at the kitchen island under golden light. Takeout boxes from a 5-star restaurant lay open. Champagne sparkled in their glasses. I froze in the doorway. Tiffany laughed at something Marcus said, then caught sight of me. Her smile faltered, replaced by irritation. "Mom, you startled me," Marcus said. "You should be asleep." I swallowed hard. I was hungry. Tiffany set down her fork. "There's yogurt in the fridge," she said curtly. I opened the fridge. It was nearly empty. 2 eggs, a half carton of milk, and an old jar of jam. Marcus sighed. "We'll go shopping tomorrow." "Sit down, Mom. Have some of mine." He pushed a plate toward me with a few leftover crumbs. Something inside me cracked then. A quiet snap like glass under pressure. But I said nothing. I simply turned and went back upstairs, each step heavier than the last. The next morning I tried to withdraw cash. The ATM screen flashed insufficient funds. That was the moment I knew. For days, I wrestled with denial. They wouldn't do this to me. But the mirror didn't lie. My cheeks were hollow, my hair thinning. I looked like a ghost haunting her own mansion. And then, one evening, there was a knock on the door. When I opened it, my brother Ray stood there. Older now, silver-haired, but with the same piercing eyes that always saw through pretense. "Margaret," he whispered, taking in my fragile frame. "Dear God, what happened to you?" I wanted to smile, to say I was fine, but my voice broke. Tears fell before words did. Ray didn't wait for permission. He stepped inside, scanning the bare walls, the missing furniture, the coldness that hung like smoke. Within minutes, he was in the kitchen, opening drawers, finding bank letters I'd never seen. "Overdraft," he read aloud. "Credit line maxed out. Mortgage review." "Margaret, when was the last time you checked your accounts?" "Wife, I trusted Marcus," I said weakly. Ray's face darkened. "You trusted a thief, sis." That night, he made a call to his friend Ethan, a lawyer who specialized in financial crimes. And while Ray spoke in low, urgent tones, I sat by the window watching the lights flicker across the garden. For the first time in over a year, I felt something spark inside me again. Not anger yet, not even hope, just the faintest pulse of awareness. They thought I was too weak to fight. They were about to find out how wrong they were. Ethan arrived the next morning, sharp and composed, carrying a leather briefcase that looked older than me but twice as reliable. His handshake was firm, his eyes didn't wander. He studied me as though he could read the story written in the lines of my face. "Mrs. Reed," he said quietly. "Ray filled me in. I'd like to see your financial records, if you still have any." Ray had already spread what little evidence he'd found on the dining table. Bank letters, insurance statements, and 2 unopened envelopes that Tiffany must have hidden under a pile of magazines. I watched Ethan's brow tighten as he examined them. "These are all red flags," he murmured. "Who's had access to your accounts?" "My son and his wife," I said, my voice trembling on the word son. They insisted I was too tired to manage things. He looked up, expression firm. "Do you remember signing any online documents? Digital authorizations? Anything for transfers?" I shook my head. "Never. I don't even know how to do that." Ethan nodded once. "Then it's forgery." He turned his laptop toward me. "Let's confirm." Within minutes, he had accessed my online banking portal, something I hadn't seen in over a year. My breath caught when the numbers appeared. My balance, once healthy and reassuring, was now barely 5 digits. Ethan scrolled through transaction history with surgical precision. "Here," he said, pointing. "They've been withdrawing small amounts every week, between $600 and $1,500 at a time. That's how they stayed under the bank's radar." "How much?" I whispered. "93,000, give or take." For a moment, the room tilted. I gripped the edge of the table, feeling the blood drain from my face. Ray cursed under his breath. "Those vultures." I didn't cry. Not then. There was a hollow quiet inside me that felt stronger than grief. It was disbelief burning into resolve. Ethan's voice softened. "Mrs. Reed, we can handle this 2 ways, criminally or civilly. But before we act, I want to give them a chance to admit what they've done. It will make restitution easier." I nodded numbly. "Do whatever you must. I just want my life back." Ray placed a comforting hand on my shoulder. "We'll make them answer, Margaret." That evening, Ethan returned with a stack of papers and a calm that made him seem almost dangerous. "They'll be home soon." "Less," I said. My pulse thudded in my ears. We waited in the living room, the same room that had once held my laughter, my husband's cigar smoke, and my son's childhood toys. Now it smelled of bleach and emptiness. I sat in the only armchair left, a queen dethroned in her own house. Headlights flashed through the window. Doors slammed. Lauder drifted in, carefree, oblivious. Marcus entered first, tie loosened, smiling as if nothing in the world could touch him. Tiffany followed, dressed in a cream-colored coat and holding a designer bag that probably cost more than my monthly pension. They froze when they saw Ethan and Ray. "Mom?" Marcus said cautiously. "What's going on?" Ethan didn't waste time. He placed a folder on the coffee table. "Mr. Reed, please sit." Tiffany's eyes narrowed. "And you are?" "Ethan Cole, I represent your mother." Marcus began, but Ethan raised a hand. "Before you speak, understand that everything said here is being recorded. You may wish to cooperate." Tiffany's confident facade cracked slightly. "Recorded. Why?" "Because," Ethan said evenly, "this discussion concerns the unauthorized transfer of approximately $93,000 from Mrs. Reed's accounts. We have evidence that digital signatures were forged. That constitutes financial elder abuse and fraud." Silence. Then Marcus laughed nervously. "That's ridiculous. Mom gave us permission. She said we could manage things." I spoke for the first time, voice calm but cutting. "Manage, yes. Steal, no." Tiffany's eyes flicked toward the door, calculating escape. "We didn't steal, we borrowed." Marcus was starting a design firm, and we needed capital. "We always planned to repay you once it took off." Ethan slid a document toward them. "Then sign this acknowledgement of debt and restitution schedule. Full repayment, with interest under court supervision." Tiffany's mouth fell open. "You can't just." "I can," Ethan interrupted, "or we can involve law enforcement. Financial elder abuse is a federal offense. Prison time averages 3 to 5 years." Marcus turned pale. "Wet. Let's talk about this reasonably." He looked at me, pleading. "Mom, please. We never wanted to hurt you. I thought we were helping." I felt my hands tremble but forced myself to meet his eyes. "Helping? Marcus, I was starving while you drank champagne in my kitchen." His lips parted but no words came. Ray stepped closer. "You bawled her dry, son. You and that wife of yours." Tiffany flinched. "Don't talk to me like that." Ethan leaned forward. "You will sign, or I'll file charges by morning. Your accounts will be frozen, your assets seized, and this property will revert to Mrs. Reed." Marcus's shoulders slumped. He looked at Tiffany, who was now trembling. "Just sign it," he whispered. "Please." Tiffany stared at him in disbelief. "You're siding with her?" "With my mother, yes," he said quietly. "The woman you nearly killed." Her pen scratched across the page, shaky but final. Marcus followed, tears spilling down his cheeks. The sound of their signatures felt like the snap of a door locking behind them forever. When they finished, Ethan gathered the papers. "You'll vacate this house within 2 hours. Leave the keys on the counter." 2 hours. Marcus repeated, voice breaking. "Where are we supposed to go?" "That," Ethan said coldly, "is no longer Mrs. Reed's concern." Tiffany tried one last time. "Margaret, please. We have nowhere to stay. I'll find a job, I'll pay. Just don't throw us out." I rose slowly, every movement deliberate. "Tiffany, you had a home. You burned it for greed. Now you can live with the ashes." She burst into tears, clutching Marcus's arm. He didn't comfort her. He simply stared at the floor, shame written across his face. Ray opened the door. "Out," he said. They left in silence. Tiffany's sobs echoed down the driveway, fading into the night. Marcus paused once on the porch, looking back at me. "Mom," he said softly, "I love you." I held his gaze, feeling both sorrow and clarity. "You left me to starve," I said. "Don't use that word on me tonight." The door shut behind them. For a moment, no one spoke. The house was quiet except for the ticking of the wall clock. I felt my knees weaken, and Ray caught me before I fell. "It's over," he whispered, but I knew it wasn't. You can't erase betrayal with a signature. The scars linger long after the thieves are gone. Still, as I looked around that half-empty house, the walls stripped bare, the air heavy but finally mine again, I felt something I hadn't in months. After the door closed behind Marcus and Tiffany, silence filled the house like smoke after a fire. For the first time in years, I could hear the faint hum of the refrigerator, the ticking clock above the mantel, and my own shallow breathing. Everything felt still and empty. Ray stayed by my side, helping me to the couch. The adrenaline that had held me upright drained from my body, leaving only exhaustion. My hands trembled as I tried to sip the tea he made. "They're gone," Ray said quietly, sitting beside me. "And they're not coming back." I nodded, staring into the steam. My mind replayed the look in Marcus's eyes as he left, guilt, fear, shame. But not love. I realized then that whatever bond had once tethered us as mother and son had been severed long ago. thread by thread, until all that remained was a hollow connection built on obligation and habit. The house was cold that night. I couldn't sleep, though my body begged for rest. Every creak of the floorboard sounded like footsteps, every whisper of wind like Tiffany's voice telling me what I should, or shouldn't, do. I wrapped a blanket around myself and sat in the living room, surrounded by bare walls and empty spaces where my memories used to live. At dawn, Ray came downstairs, still in his coat. "You need to see a doctor, Margaret." "You're too weak." "I'm fine, I lied." My voice was barely above a whisper. "You're not." He crouched down in front of me, his eyes soft but firm. "Please, don't make me lose you too." That word, too, pierced through my stubbornness. I thought of Richard, of the day I'd lost him, of the quiet funeral where Marcus hadn't shed a tear. I thought of how grief had blurred my vision, made me cling to my son, trust him blindly. And now here I was, thinner than I'd ever been, my heart and bank account equally emptied. "All right," I said finally. "I'll go." At the hospital, fluorescent lights buzzed overhead as nurses moved efficiently between beds. The doctor, a kind-faced woman in her 40s, examined me with gentle urgency. After a series of tests, she returned with the results. "Mrs. Reed," she began carefully, "you're severely malnourished. Your blood sugar levels are unstable, your blood pressure dangerously low. If you'd gone another week like this..." She didn't finish the sentence. She didn't have to. Ray reached for my hand, his grip warm and steady. I managed a faint smile. "Guess I was tougher than I looked," I said. "You shouldn't have to be," he replied. I stayed in the hospital for 9 days. 9 days of colorless walls, quiet machines, and the slow return of appetite I'd forgotten I could feel. Each morning, Ray visited with fresh flowers. Each evening, Ethan dropped by with updates. "The bank has confirmed the forgery," Ethan told me on the 3rd day. "They're freezing the joint accounts Marcus set up in your name. We may recover about 30,000. The rest, it'll be a long fight." "Let it be long," I said. "I'm patient now." He smiled faintly. "That's the spirit." By the time I was discharged, I could walk a little steadier. Ray brought me home, though home no longer felt like the word for it. The house was stripped bare. Tiffany's idea of luxury had left me with white walls, cold floors, and echoes. But it was mine again. We spent the next week cleaning and restoring what we could. Ray brought in some furniture from storage. I replaced Tiffany's sterile decorations with simple flowers and family photos. One night, I lit the fireplace for the first time in years. As the flames warmed the room, I sat in my armchair and thought about Marcus. I wondered where they'd gone. If they had money. If he regretted what he'd done. A part of me wanted to forgive him. A mother's heart doesn't stop loving easily. But another part, the woman who had been starved, lied to, and humiliated, refused. Forgiveness, I decided, would have to be earned. Ethan called again a week later. "Good news," he said. "The judge approved the restitution agreement. They'll begin repayment within 30 days under supervision." "How?" I asked. "Marcus doesn't even have a job." Ethan chuckled lightly. "He does now. He's working construction for a friend of mine. Humble work, but it'll cover the payments." I didn't respond. The image of my son, once proud and polished, lifting bricks instead of drawing blueprints should have pained me. Instead, it brought a quiet sense of balance. "Thank you, Ethan," I said softly. "You've done more for me than my own blood." He hesitated, then replied, "Sometimes family isn't who we're born with. It's who stands beside us when everything falls apart." That night, I wrote a letter to Marcus. Not of anger, but of truth. "Marcus, you took my money, my trust, and nearly my life. But I won't let hate rot what's left of me. You are still my son, though I no longer recognize the man you've become. Pay back what you owe, not for me but for yourself. Learn to stand without stealing. And remember, what you destroy out of greed can never be rebuilt with regret." I didn't send it. Some truths are meant to be spoken only to the wind. Weeks passed. My strength returned, slowly but surely. I began taking walks again through the garden, where the roses had withered during Tiffany's reign of minimalism. I replanted them myself, dirt beneath my fingernails, sun warming my skin. It felt like resurrection. One afternoon, while pruning a new rosebush, I found an envelope in the mailbox with no return address. Inside was a cashier's check for $2,000 and a note in Marcus's handwritings. "I'm sorry. I'll keep paying. Please stay well." I stood there for a long moment, the wind rustling through the leaves. the faint scent of earth and redemption mixing in the air. $2,000 couldn't undo what he'd done, but it was something. A crack in the armor of his pride, maybe even the first sign that guilt was doing what love could not. As I walked back to the house, I realized I no longer felt like a victim. I had survived them. I had taken back what they tried to erase. But survival wasn't enough. They had stripped me of dignity, made me beg in my own home. And somewhere deep inside, a quiet, dangerous thought began to bloom. If they thought I would forgive and forget, they were mistaken. Because revenge, I had learned, doesn't always come in fury. Sometimes, it grows slowly, patient, deliberate, and cold. And mine was just beginning. The weeks that followed felt almost like an awakening. My body was still fragile, but my mind... Oh, my mind was sharper than ever. It's strange how pain clears your vision. When you've lost everything, what's left becomes painfully, beautifully clear. Each morning, I brewed fresh coffee, the rich aroma filling the kitchen once again. I no longer drank the cheap blend Tiffany had preferred. I went back to my favorite dark roast from Seattle, the one Richard used to order for me every winter. Small rituals like that grounded me. Ray came by most days to check on me, though I knew it wasn't pity that brought him. We'd formed something deeper. A quiet alliance built on respect and unspoken understanding. Sometimes he'd stay for dinner, and we'd talk about books, the garden, or the absurdity of people like Tiffany who measured worth in handbags and square footage. But at night, when he left, I sat alone by the fire with my thoughts. That's when the memories returned. Marcus's cold eyes, Tiffany's smirk, the way they'd stripped me of everything with such precision. I couldn't let it rest. Forgiveness might have been the moral choice, but I was done being moral. I wanted justice. Not the kind the courts dispense in polite envelopes, but something far more personal, so I began to plan. It started with small things. I called Ethan and asked for every piece of financial documentation he'd gathered. The bank records, the forged signatures, the credit card statements. I studied them late into the night. The paper trail was a story of arrogance, luxury boutiques, private spa retreats, custom furniture orders, and one purchase that caught my attention. A pending investment under Tiffany's name. A property company in Palm Springs. She'd used my money as collateral for a small development project, one that hadn't yet broken ground. That was my opening. The next day, I made an appointment with my old financial advisor, a meticulous man named Harold who'd managed Richard's estate years ago. He was shocked to see me walk into his office after all this time. "Margaret," he said, rising from his chair, "you look different." "I am," I replied simply. "I need your help." He adjusted his glasses and gestured for me to sit. "Of course. What's this about?" I slid the file across his desk. "I want to know everything about this property group. Their investors, their contracts, their vulnerabilities." He flipped through the papers, brows furrowing. "This is risky. You're not thinking of getting involved with them, are you?" "Oh, I'm already involved," I said with a thin smile. "I just plan to shift the balance." He studied me for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "All right, give me a week." While Harold worked his magic, I focused on rebuilding the estate, not just physically, but in spirit. I replaced the sterile white decor with warm tones again, rehung the oil paintings Tiffany had banished to the attic, and reopened the garden doors each morning to let the air flow freely. The house began to feel alive again. Ray noticed the change one afternoon as he helped me plant lavender by the fountain. "You've got your fire back," he said, wiping his hands on his jeans. "I never lost it," I replied. "I just let someone else convince me I had." He grinned. "So what's next?" "Next," I said, looking toward the horizon. "I take back what's mine, and make sure they never do this to anyone else." A week later, Harold called. "Margaret, you're not going to believe this. Tiffany's property deal, it's unstable. Her partners are already under investigation for tax evasion. If the right complaint reaches the authorities, the entire investment will collapse before it launches." I felt a rush of cold satisfaction. "Can it be traced back to me?" "Not if you're careful." "I'm always careful," I said. That night, I drafted an anonymous tip, detailed, precise, and supported by the evidence Harold provided. I sent it to the state's Financial Crimes Division. By morning, the investigation was officially underway. Tiffany's precious project, funded by my stolen money, was about to implode. Over the next 2 months, I watched from a distance as the dominoes fell. I didn't need to lift another finger. The partners were exposed, the contracts voided, and the investment seized for auditing. Tiffany's name appeared in every report as a key stakeholder. She and Marcus tried to play innocent, of course, but the damage was done. Their accounts were frozen again. I heard through Ethan that they were struggling to make rent in a small apartment across town. The irony was poetic. Ray found me in the garden the day the news broke. "So," he said with a knowing smile, "you did something, didn't you?" I looked up from my roses, gloves still on, and replied lightly, "I just planted a few seeds in the right soil." He chuckled. "Remind me never to get on your bad side." "Oh, Ray," I said, meeting his gaze with a small smirk. "You'd have to try very hard." But beneath my calm, a darker satisfaction pulsed. I didn't just want them punished. I wanted them to feel the same helplessness they'd forced upon me, the same slow, choking despair of losing control. Revenge, I realized, wasn't about destruction, it was about balance, and I was far from finished. By late summer, I had fully regained my health. My hair had regained its shine, my cheeks their color. I even started attending local charity events again, the same circles Tiffany once bragged about infiltrating. The whispers returned, too. People had heard rumors about what happened, though none knew the full truth. "Oh, Margaret," they'd say, "you've come out stronger than ever." I'd smile politely and sip my wine, never correcting them. Let them think it was resilience. Let them call it grace. Only I knew it was vengeance disguised in pearls and perfume. One evening, after a gala, I returned home to find another envelope on my doorstep. This time, it wasn't a check. It was a handwritten letter, from Marcus. "Mom, I don't know how to start this. Everything's fallen apart. Tiffany's furious. She blames me for losing everything. We're barely scraping by. I've been working double shifts, trying to keep up with the repayments, but it's not enough. I know you hate me. I don't blame you. But please, if there's any mercy left in you, tell me how to make this right." Marcus, I read the letter twice, then set it on the table beside me. For a long time, I said nothing. Mercy, that word again. They'd shown me none when I begged for food in my own house. And now, when the tables had turned, he was asking for mercy. I poured myself a glass of wine and stared into the fire, my reflection flickering in the glass. "Mercy," I whispered to the empty room. "Let's see if you've earned it." Because revenge, I thought, wasn't over when they suffered. It ended only when they understood why they suffered, and I would make sure Marcus did. The next morning, I held Marcus's letter again. The paper was smudged in places, as if he'd written it in tears or haste. A part of me, the mother I used to be, felt an old ache stir somewhere deep inside. But that woman no longer ruled me. She'd been buried the day they locked me out of my own home. Still, I needed to see him. Not out of love, out of necessity. Closure wasn't something that arrived neatly folded in an envelope. You had to take it, so I called him. His voice, when he answered, was small. "Mom, Les, Marcus." "It's me." Silence, then a shaky exhale. "You got my letter?" "I did. I didn't know if you'd even read it." I don't know what to say anymore." "Then don't," I replied softly. "Just meet me, tomorrow noon, at the old cafe on Elm." He hesitated. "All right." I hung up without another word. The following day, I dressed with deliberate care. A silk blouse the color of champagne, diamond earrings that caught the morning light, and the same ivory coat I'd worn to his graduation years ago. Back then, he'd called me the most elegant woman in the room. That memory used to make me proud. Now it just made me tired. When I arrived, the cafe was nearly empty. The barista gave me a curious look, perhaps wondering why a woman like me was sitting alone, perfectly poised, yet radiating something cold. Marcus walked in a few minutes later. I almost didn't recognize him. The confident, expensively dressed man I'd known was gone. His hair was unkempt, his eyes hollow. The arrogance had drained away, leaving only regret. He stopped short when he saw me. "Mom." I gestured toward the chair across from me. "Sit." He obeyed like a scolded child. For a moment we just looked at each other, mother and son, two strangers bound by blood and betrayal. Finally, I broke the silence. "So, how's Tiffany?" His mouth twitched. "She left." "Of course she did. She said I ruined everything, that I wasn't man enough to fix it." I stirred my tea slowly. "She's not wrong." His head dropped. "I deserve that." "No," I said, leaning back. "You deserve worse. But I'm not here to humiliate you, Marcus. I'm here to understand how my son, the boy I raised with everything a mother could give, turned into a man who could throw me away like garbage. He rubbed his face, fingers trembling. It wasn't supposed to happen like that. Tiffany, she convinced me you'd be better off if I took control. She said you were senile, weak, in the way. I interrupted. Go on, I've heard them all. He winced. I thought I was protecting you. At first. Then the money came, and it was easier to look the other way. I kept telling myself I'd fix it later, that you'd forgive me. Forgive you? I repeated, my voice sharp enough to cut glass. Marcus, you didn't just hurt me. You erased me. You took my name off everything I built. You let that woman spit on me in my own home. Tears welled in his eyes. I know, and I hate myself for it. Good, I said quietly. That's a start. He reached across the table, but I didn't move. His hand hovered there, shaking. Mom, please, I'm broke. Everything's gone. The apartment, the savings, even Tiffany's jewelry. I've been working double shifts at a warehouse just to survive. I don't expect you to forgive me. I need help. I don't know where else to go. There it was, the plea I'd been waiting for. Help, I echoed. You want my help? He nodded miserably. Yes, please. I studied him, the slumped shoulders, the hollow eyes, the smallness of him now. Once, I'd thought he was my greatest accomplishment. Now he was the proof of my greatest mistake. Do you remember what you said the night Tiffany had me thrown out? I asked. He blinked, confused. What? You said, don't make this harder than it has to be, Mom. Those words stayed with me. I thought about them every day in that shelter. He looked horrified. Mom, I raised a hand. Don't interrupt. Because now I'm going to say the same thing to you. Don't make this harder than it has to be, Marcus. His lips parted in disbelief. What are you? I opened my purse and slid a white envelope across the table. His eyes flicked down, then back up at me. What's this? Your chance, I said. There's enough cash in there for a one-way bus ticket. There's a small town 3 states over where no one knows your name. Go there, start over, work hard, stay quiet. Maybe, if you're lucky, you'll learn who you are without Tiffany whispering in your ear. He stared at me, confusion mixing with hope. You do that for me? I'm not doing it for you, I said. I'm doing it for the boy you used to be, the one who used to hug me before school and tell me he'd make me proud. He swallowed hard. And if I don't go, I met his gaze, unflinching. Then I'll make sure what's left of your reputation disappears. The authorities already have enough to reopen the fraud investigation. Tiffany will sing like a bird when the pressure hits her. You'll lose your freedom next. His face paled. You'd really do that? I already did, I said evenly. You just haven't seen the results yet. For a moment we sat in silence. He looked at the envelope, then at me, realization dawning, the kind of realization that burns through denial like fire through paper. Finally, he stood. I'll go. Good. He hesitated, then whispered, Do you still love me? That question sliced deeper than I expected. I could have lied, given him the comfort he wanted, but lies were what got us here. I love the memory of you, I said. The rest I've buried. His shoulders slumped. He turned and walked away without another word, the envelope clutched in his hand. I watched him go, my heart heavy but steady. The cafe's door closed behind him, the bell chiming softly. That sound, that small, final note, felt like a door closing inside me too. For the first time in years I felt peace. Not happiness, not yet, but peace. As I sipped the last of my tea, Ray called. His timing, as always, was uncanny. How'd it go? He asked. I smiled faintly. Let's just say the last chapter's almost written. And the ending? Oh, I said, looking out the window as the autumn wind stirred the golden leaves. That depends on whether Marcus keeps his word. Because revenge wasn't about destruction anymore. It was about balance. And I'd finally restored mine. Autumn deepened into winter, and the air carried that quiet chill that always makes the world feel smaller, slower. My garden was bare now. The lavender gone, the roses pruned, the fountain frozen in mid-song. But inside, the house was warm again. It no longer felt like the cold shell I'd once wandered through in silence. I'd filled it with life. Dinner parties, laughter, even music. Ray had insisted I host a small Christmas gathering, and I agreed, mostly because it amused me how far I'd come, from homeless to hostess. On the night of the party, the house glowed. The chandeliers sparkled, the grand piano played softly in the background, and guests filled every room with cheerful chatter. I moved through them gracefully, glass in hand, the perfect image of calm success. "Margaret," someone said behind me. It was the mayor's wife, her eyes bright. "It's so wonderful to see you smiling again. You've truly rebuilt your life." I smiled politely. "Yes, sometimes you have to lose everything to realize what's worth keeping." They laughed, nodding as if I'd offered some clever toast, but I meant every word. Later that night, after everyone left and the lights dimmed, I stood by the window overlooking the empty driveway. Snow had started to fall, soft and silent, blanketing everything in white. The peace of it filled me, but so did a faint melancholy. Because even victories come with echoes. I hadn't heard from Marcus since that day at the cafe. I told myself I didn't care, but every so often, when I saw a young man in a crowd or heard a familiar tone in a stranger's voice, I wondered, had he taken the chance I gave him? Or had he fallen back into the same self-destructive patterns? I didn't need to know. Some stories end better unfinished. Ray came up beside me, 2 glasses of wine in hand. "You did it," he said softly. "You really did." I looked at him, my reflection mirrored in the window pane beside his. "Did what?" "Survived," he said. "Reclaimed yourself." I smiled faintly. Survival isn't enough, Ray. I wanted them to understand what they took. Not just from me, but from themselves. And do you think they do? I took a slow sip of wine, thinking of Tiffany's empty bank accounts and Marcus's broken pride. They will. Time has a way of teaching lessons that vengeance can only begin. He nodded. "You've got a poetic way of saying I won." "Poetic justice," I said with a small laugh. "My favorite kind." The clock struck midnight, the world outside was still, the snow deepening with every passing minute. And for the first time in years, I felt whole. Not the old Margaret, the dutiful wife, the generous hostess, the mother who gave until she disappeared. No, this was a new version, refempered, unshakable. I thought back to the day I'd stood at that shelter window, watching the rain streak the glass. I'd believed my story ended there, but stories don't end when you lose everything. They end when you stop fighting for what's rightfully yours. And I had fought. Not with fists, but with intelligence, precision, and patience. The kind of revenge that doesn't just destroy but restores. A week later, I received another letter, forwarded through my attorney. It was from Marcus again, postmarked from a small town in Oregon. "Mom, I left the city like you said. Got a job fixing cars. It's not glamorous, but it's honest work. I rent a small room above the shop. It's quiet. Sometimes I sit by the river and think about everything I did. You were right. Tiffany's gone for good. I don't blame her anymore. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I just wanted you to know I'm trying. For the first time in my life, I'm really trying." Marcus, I read it slowly twice, then folded it neatly and placed it in my desk drawer. No tears this time, just a strange, gentle warmth spreading through my chest. Perhaps this was what closure really looked like. Not dramatic apologies or grand reconciliations, but quiet acknowledgement that the scales had finally balanced. That evening, I sat with Ray on the terrace. The sky was streaked with the last light of day, pale gold fading into violet. The estate shimmered with frost, the world crisp and still. He handed me a blanket and said, "You ever think about what comes next?" I thought for a long moment before answering. "Yes, I think I'll live." He chuckled. "You say that like it's a new idea." "It is," I said. "For years I existed for others, for Richard, for Marcus, for appearances. But now, I want to live for myself, travel, paint again. Maybe start a foundation for women who lost everything like I did." Ray smiled. "That sounds like the perfect ending." "Not an ending," I corrected gently. "A beginning." He lifted his glass. "To new beginnings." Then, I clinked mine against his. "To justice," I added. The sound echoed softly in the cold air. As night fell and the stars blinked awake above the darkened trees, I felt something inside me settle. A quiet triumph, a peace I didn't need to announce. The kind that only comes when you've faced hell and walked out in heels. Revenge hadn't ruined me, it had rebuilt me. And somewhere deep down, I hoped Marcus found his own redemption too, not for my sake but for his. Because every lesson I'd taught through pain and consequence had come from love, even when it no longer looked like it. When I finally went inside, I passed the mirror in the hallway and paused. The woman staring back wasn't a victim or a mother or a ghost of her old life. She was power itself, quiet, deliberate, untouchable. Margaret reborn. I smiled at her reflection, whispered one final truth, and turned off the light. Justice isn't what others give you, it's what you take back. And with that, my story was complete. If you were in Margaret's place, would you forgive your son, or make him feel what you felt? Tell me in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe, because next time, another woman's revenge will leave you breathless.